Welcome to another edition of the Two World Podcast. Today, I will be one of your co-hosts, and I'm Jacob, and I have with me...
I am Barney.
And the two of us will be sharing with you about something that we all experience at some point in our lives and often find it very important, and that is vacation. We'll be reflecting on vacations that we've taken, different ways that we enter into vacation, and the different roles that vacation can play for us. And just to get us started, I was reflecting on this in light of a scripture passage from the Psalms, Psalm 46, verse 10, and it talks about being still. The passage says, "Be still and know that God is there." Or literally it says, "Be still and know that I am God," referring to God speaking to us. And when I was looking at that word for being still, I was fascinated to find out that in the Latin translation, it is the word vacatio, which means or relates to our English word for vacation. This sense of stopping our work and all of our busy activity and entering into a different type of space. And in that original psalm, a space also around God. And as I looked at the word in more depth, I realized there were different shades of meaning. In the Greek translation, the word was scholazo, which relates to our English idea of being a scholar, and how sometimes in the pursuit of knowledge, we drop other things and we just focus in intently on something and we learn something new. And then I was even looking at the Hebrew word rapha, which means to cease from activity and just to be still and calm. And as I thought about it, I'm like, all of those are valid aspects of vacation. Sometimes it is a time of learning. We explore and we see new things. Sometimes it is about just ceasing activity and slowing down. And sometimes it is playful. It is a vacatio, entering into a time of enjoyment. And so today, as we talk through our own experiences, hopefully we'll see how vacation plays many important roles, and we should seek to be open to all of them. So Barney, as we start on this topic, I would love to ask you, what jumps out in your mind when you think of vacation?
Oh, yeah. If I could just reflect a bit on the scripture that you mentioned first. It's so interesting how the three different languages, and I guess if you include English, four, each kind of have a different take on the same scripture, and they add so many different elements to it. Especially like the Greek word kind of incorporates the knowing part in the one word. And then I also wonder what maybe the translators were thinking, because they all are working from the same Hebrew word. And if they thought, well, in my context or in my language, this word, maybe we have a word that also would imply stillness, like the more closer to the Hebrew, but we kind of feel like it's more vacatio, or it's more the being still and studying, or if it's more just being still. And it's so interesting how they each took a different look at that. And that's part of what just studying the Bible and knowing more about the different translations really adds so much more to how we can learn and know the words that we've read so many times. And that's just neat. But to think more about kind of vacation in the traditional sense, maybe my first thoughts go to family vacations when I was little. Since we had a big family, I think that a few things always took place when it was vacation time. The luggage rack got installed on top of the car, and then lots of sleeping bags and the tent. And I think sometimes as I talk with people about what it was like having family vacations when I was little, I often say, we were a big family, and so we didn't really, it would be costly to go, anywhere extensive And so we often went camping, but I think that maybe I lucked out in that way because we had so many fun times camping, just in, around the Great Lakes, in the New England area, Canada. And that ended up being such a wonderful thing to do because we were with with our big family and we have so many great memories of connected with that. I think, I mean, I tell people, how many times have I seen Niagara Falls? People who haven't even seen it once. For me, it's like, oh yeah, Niagara Falls, I've been there, how many times. And they're like, wow, really? And it's like, oh yeah, sure. um yeah, that's I think hearing about vacation, that's kind of the routine that I had the benefit and the blessing to experience so many years growing up. How about yourself?
Oh, that's very similar for me too. Vacation is very much in the realm of family and connected with so many memories of sense of adventure together as family, and all of the quirkiness that each of the family members would bring to that journey or that trip each year. And we did also stay in tents, at during a certain time in our cycle of vacations. We were camping more and then later less. I remember one year there was a torrential downpour the last day we were breaking up camp. And I think that kind of sealed the fate of camping for our family. My parents were kind of like, never again, because my sister and I went and sat in the car where they did all the work. We
Ooh,
should have, we were pretty young, but we should have
sure.
helped them a little bit more, I guess, in some way, as we could. But but no, I think you're right. It's if we think on the trips that we were able to take, you had mentioned Niagara Falls. A lot of them can relate to beautiful natural areas, whether they're beaches or um, national parks, and I think there is something about entering into enjoyment of nature that is common that many of us share when we think of vacation. And whether we do it during the day and then go back to a hotel, or whether we do it during the day and then stay in nature and camp, either way, there's some measure there. So I would like to share maybe a few pictures as we think about vacation, specifically talking about nature and beauty and how that invigorates us. I have a picture here that I just love. And let's see here if I can pull it up on the screen. It's a picture from Michigan, and that is where our family will be going on vacation
Mhm.
this year. And this is near Holland, Michigan. This is at a beach called Laketown Beach.
Mm.
And at the end of the day, as the sun was setting, our family was walking along the beach, and it was one of those moments where the beauty of the place just washes over you,
Mm.
draws you into a sense of awe and appreciation. And
Uh,
for me, this is one of those moments of vacation where I say that takes me out of my stress, my normal sense of busyness, and it brings me to a place of rest and refreshment. And so this is one of those pictures that helps me remember that about vacation. It has that potential to take us out of our cycles and our frustrations, and give us a sense to catch our breath and appreciate beauty and what's around us. So that's one that comes to mind for me. Um, is there anything that comes to mind for you in terms of like an image or a photo
mhm.
uh, of your family vacation that would be something you'd like
Yeah.
to share?
Yeah, I prepared some photos, and they're more current actually. But actually, I thought before we go forward, maybe I remembered, and we didn't talk about this earlier, but it came to mind then. We have both been to Cook's Forest for vacation, and
Yes.
in my family's case, the reason we went there is because my mom had gone there for her vacations,
Right.
and it really there is a lot of fun things to do there. And I think for us it was a nice break because we weren't in a I don't think we weren't in a tent that time, so it was kind of special. Oh, here we are. We're in nature, but we're not in a tent, you know. and,
Right. Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Interesting.
and there's
Cook's
a
Forest
lot
is
of
lovely.
stuff to do. Yeah.
Yes, and I also like that you mentioned that it was almost like something that was part of your mom's heritage. Like they had
hmm
vacation there, and then as your family did that, you kind of entered into her experience, and
hmm
she could share that with you. And there is that dimension often, I think, with vacation of story and of family and connection. We also, I'd mentioned Michigan earlier. We're going there again this year because that is where my wife Katie had vacationed throughout her childhood. And so it's something again that she can share with our kids, and it's a sense of connection. But Cook's Forest is fantastic. I actually ended up going with a really close family that had befriended me when I was in high school, and it had been my first time going, but I was just overwhelmed with the beauty of the area, and being there with them, enjoying activities with them. We did several family wide like soccer games. They like to play soccer, and that was really interesting. All the cousins, and I was really into soccer at the time, and then also canoeing and a lot of hiking. Did you do hiking when you were there? Would you say
Yeah, we
some?
did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Did you do anything on the water? Any canoeing or kayaking? Or
Oh, I think we did as well.
okay,
Um, yeah, but I like that picture that you shared earlier, because it doesn't it really gets back to kind of the key or the core of that Bible verse.
hmm,
And it's, I think it's a good way to remind us of what vacation can be.
hmm,
Maybe um for me these days, especially since my vacations often involve flying, um, vacation is really kind of like itineraries and going here and going there and doing this and doing as much as possible, and making sure to see this place and eat at this thing and do this and do that. And it's very rewarding and creates a lot of memories, but it doesn't always leave time, I think, for the stillness. And so I had forgotten that aspect of um, vacation.
hmm.
Yeah. If
That's
I can,
interesting.
you know, mhm. Yeah. So maybe I can share one a photo here. I'll just share one. I have plenty to share, but uh, this is this is Las Vegas, and
Oh,
this is the first vacation that Ayako and I took together. And we didn't plan to come here at all. We were using my friend's tickets, like his kind of buddy pass tickets, and we weren't sure which flight we were get on. And we actually didn't get on a flight for the first 2 days that we tried because of some uh, things happening within the company. Um, and and then we flew to Chicago, and I thought, well, should we just go to Ohio? And she's like, well, let's see what's available. And we quickly rushed to a place where we could find internet and booked a trip here, a flight to Las Vegas. And we had no idea of what to expect. And the thing that amazed me so much is everyone, as you can see, we're far away from kind of downtown. Everyone is so kind
hmm,
that you meet there when,
hmm.
we took the bus and we were walking, and kids on the street they're like super polite. Oh, excuse me, as they're riding their bicycle by. And it's really not what I was used to, and definitely not what I expected. And we didn't do any of the typical Las Vegas things, but we had such a great time. And then we took a Greyhound bus to Anaheim and had a nice time there, and then flew back home. It's one of those impromptu, one of the times where we didn't have everything planned out, and had a lot of great memories that way. And it was our first vacation too, so that was just so nice.
So, in a sense, in that way, vacation as an adventure or just a time of discovery, you hadn't
Mm.
really
Oh yeah.
developed an itinerary. It was kind of exploring what could emerge with all the possibilities in the spur of the moment. But then
Mm-hmm.
also it was interesting to hear how just in meeting people, you could appreciate their kindness, their hospitality. That was a part of the experience. I like that. And maybe if I could piggyback on that,
Mm-hmm.
and just share with you a very distinct memory I have from when I was able to visit with you in 2019 during my sabbatical there in Japan. Uh, I felt it was very similar to what you're describing. Although I did have an itinerary, there were times when I was going out on my own and things were not quite as structured, and I was discovering things. And people were very hospitable and kind and gracious. I experienced that just as you described. And then I was learning new things, and seeing new types of environments and landscapes and art and architecture. But one of the memories that I really think is so unique was one that we both shared. And I'm going to go ahead and pull up the picture here. It might take me just a moment to get to it. And once I do, I'll have to skip a couple things here to get there. Here we go. Now, I don't know if you remember this spot,
Yeah.
but we went to Bozo Nomoro,
Yeah.
or Bozo Village. Is that how you would
Yeah.
say it?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
this historic um, throwback to an earlier era in Japan. And it was so interesting walking around, looking at the buildings and how the farming had been done, and even the shops that had different types of artisans and crafts work there. And but my favorite moment almost of the whole day was sitting in this almost like an attic room,
Mm-hmm.
looking out over like a courtyard area, and just kind of relaxing there, ceasing
Mm-hmm.
from activity. Because we
Mm-hmm.
had seen a lot already by that point, and we just kind of sat there on the wood floor and talked. And I don't know if you remember, um, a child came up the stairs and was like, "Do you remember that?" I was like, "Hello."
Yeah.
We're like, "Hello." And they just kind of looked around a bit, and they're like, "All right, goodbye."
I know.
um, did that? Did you remember that moment before I show you this
Yeah.
picture? Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Um, and I know for you, maybe the sense of discovery or exploration might be a little bit lower than me in this situation, because you've probably been here a number of times, and this is more in your context now. But it was the intersection of that discovery with that moment of ceasing from activity and
Yeah.
being still for a bit and resting and enjoying
Mm-hmm.
it, that this
Mm-hmm.
picture really embodies, or it displays well. So yeah.
Yeah. I wondered, and I actually wonder if you wouldn't mind kind of relating the story of your first morning when you came to Japan, because I think the night before we had ramen, and then I said, if you have free time, it's nice to walk around in the temple area.
Yes, yes. Oh, that was fantastic. Um, yeah, I got up very early and I walked over to Narita Sun Park. Is that how you would say it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and there was hardly anybody there. And it was very quiet and very meditative. The cherry blossoms were out at that time of year. Um, Everything looked verdant and full of life. There's a nice uh, creek or stream that flows into a like a larger pond area, and near there's like a calligraphy museum, and there's all these fascinating things to see. But as I walked through the park, slowly, the longer I was there, people started arriving, maybe on their way to their jobs, maybe at the calligraphy museum, some of them, I don't know, different places around, different buildings around. And I would say to people like, "Ohayo gozaimasu." I would just try to say good morning, and people would respond and wave to me.
Uh,
And that felt very nice. And it was one of my favorite moments, just taking in the the scenery in the park and taking my time to savor it, because that's the thing I think about, at least that sabbatical experience, was just getting away from the rhythm of a constant schedule with its necessities, and just taking time to savor something. And just,
mhm.
we normally don't have 2.5 hours to walk around a park and do nothing else, like, but that. And so I was entering in, and then on my way back, I just thought, oh, I'll meander through some of the neighborhoods and take a long route back to the Richmond Hotel. And so I had Google Maps and I just kind of walked along some of the roads and appreciated the houses. And there was a school that I walked by. I thought it was fascinating seeing the vending machines at different spots along my route. I'm like, wow, there's so many more vending machines here. but I appreciated, the architecture of the homes and how nicely people kept them, and the plantings that they had that were unique and different. I did spend time too by that pond, looking out over there was like, I'm not quite sure what the term would be. It was like a covered building extending over the water. Like, so I'm not sure what that term is, but I spent some time there looking down at the fish. There's some maybe koi or something down there,
right.
swimming. And so that was a great way to start my sabbatical. After the night before, with eating ramen with you and seeing the park at night, going the next morning by myself, just with the quiet and greeting a few people and taking in the nature that was there.
And
so
I think you called your family a little bit to kind of share it with them, didn't you?
Yes, I was able to.
Nice.
Yes, it's incredible what technology lets us do now, because I was able to, I think it was through either FaceTime or Zoom or one of the platforms. I just was live streaming as I was walking, and I was showing them some different things around Narita in one of the streets where I was walking. There were a lot of shops, and actually that street that the ramen restaurant was on, if you keep walking down the hill, I was walking with them and they're showing them all these shops that eventually ends by this gate into the Nara Sun Park and all of the other like holy sites there. So so that was really neat. And then I also enjoyed too posting some of these pictures on Facebook to people back in Ohio or in the US, just to share some of the beauty. And that's such a fun thing about vacation, sharing some of your experiences with other people, and maybe some of them too can see things they wouldn't otherwise have seen, or hear an interesting story that will brighten their day or that they would enjoy. So thank you for asking. Yeah. And I would say again, and I've probably told you many times, but just even for our listeners, like Barney, I just really appreciate your role in that whole experience as a host, as a guide. You spoiled me. You took me to so many places and treated me so graciously. And so thank you again. That was a tremendous experience. I'll always remember. And you really made that possible. So thank you. I love that. Fantastic trip in 2019. So yeah.
I think it's so nice you talking about photos, and now of course we can post them online and share them digitally, and maybe you also have kind of memories of getting the photos developed, and then like afterwards, maybe in my case, like sitting down with my aunt or with my grandma, and all of us sitting down together, and then I feel like I am a part of sharing. We're all sharing like the photos that we took, and maybe people are kind of piping in about, oh, this was my favorite part of the trip, and oh no, this was my favorite part, and look at this photo, and then they're able to kind of experience it a little bit with you, and also through your reactions and through retelling the stories, kind of take part in that too. And I think maybe I wonder if we lose just a touch of that when we're sharing things digitally, because we're in our different spaces. But it's just so much harder to recreate that again these days, which is good. The pros and the cons, the good and the bad parts of that.
That's a really good point. And I think when you're sharing a photo and you're sitting beside somebody, the experience is grounded in your relationship. And when you share something online on social media, it might be ambiguous to some people about why you're sharing the photo. Like some people might be like, oh, this person's showing off. Like they're in this foreign country. Like, look at me, I'm getting these adventures. Or some people might take it as, more personally, like this person is giving a window into their journey. There's so many different ways it can be seen, but when you're sitting next to somebody and there's a personal story and connection, it's much richer. I think you're right. We do lose something there. But I will say too, like what I guess the flip side is when you share it more broadly, you can sometimes have an enjoyable experience with if people enter into sharing comments or asking questions. Sometimes that can um, give another dimension to your experience while you're there. And some people were writing back during my time in Japan from they were writing from Ohio here, and that was meaningful. But at the same time, I agree with you. It's not the same as when you're sitting in person looking at the photos. So yeah, 100%. Speaking of photos, are there any other photos that you might like to share from your experiences with vacation?
Yeah. The remaining photos I have are kind of from maybe one of the best vacations that I've had. And it was 10 years ago this year. And it was another one of those impromptu ones. Um, so I had gotten home on summer vacation, and I don't know why, but I said to my parents, I said, like maybe the day I got there, the day before, I was like, yeah, every time I come home, I've got this jet lag and I wake up at like 5 in the morning. Why don't we put that to good use and go somewhere? And they're like, yeah, okay. And, usually there's a lot of, even with my parents, there's planning to do and getting things around. And we just kind of got things together and put the tents in the car um, and went like that, maybe my second day. And we I'll start sharing photos. We went everywhere. We went to Blue Earth, Minnesota. So we started and just kind of went west and then went north to Wisconsin. And then my mom is such a big Laura Ingalls Wilder fan that we went to some of the places that they went where they lived in Minnesota. And I don't think Blue Earth was one of them. I think we just pulled over because we're like, hey, there's this Jolly Green Giant statue. And then I didn't recognize it at first when I was choosing photos, but my parents are in there down at the bottom there. And then here's one of the houses, one of the kind of communities that Laura Ingalls Wilder was in. I think it was in maybe where the Plum Creek kind of era of her books were. And I made my parents stand there and got this photo. And yeah. And I think this was like one of the houses that they might have lived in that she really describes so well in her books, like the sod houses, and seeing this and
Oh, that's so
interacting.
interesting.
Yeah, so neat. And then we went west to South Dakota, and it was around this time that we realized it's just as fast to drive on the county roads as it is on the highway. So we pulled off, and we just went where we wanted to go, and here's this small little dirt road. Let's try it, and we saw all these cows. And I think as we're going to like maybe the Black Hills, I think, and yeah, they're just there, and sorry, and hiking around, beware of rattlesnakes, and then we were at Custer National Park, and someone said you have to take the Needles Highway, and there's all these rock structures there, and they're just so interesting and unique that you wouldn't see maybe anywhere else. I don't know. And then that led us to Crazy Horse. And the neat thing about this is my dad had been here years and years before when he was following the wheat harvest, I think. And, I think he was in university, and he, John in Texas, I think, and just went all the way up into almost Alberta. And they were just getting this statue started when he was there. And then here he has a chance to see it again all these years later. And then this was a photo that, again, the nice thing about camping is that you usually, after a day or two, you wake up kind of with sunrise. And I went down to this big pond and just took photos and saw these geese ready to take off. And then there's just buffalo walking around in the park like it's just the normal thing that they do. And then, of course, this is from far away. We stopped a few times. We actually took kind of the back road to get to Mount Rushmore. And, we stopped a few times along the way. And this is from pretty far away, and it's fun because uh, you get a good sense of the sculpture in general, and there aren't so many people around as there are at the park itself. And then we decided we would go as far as I guess it's called Devil's Tower in Wyoming. And this was a sunrise photo that I took, and it was just so neat to see it because the rock is kind of a green color, and then in the sunrise it has this nice kind of copper look to it, and
Ah,
we even had
wow.
a rainbow, and it was just. And then, on the way back, we passed through the sunflower fields, and then we went. My parents said, "Well, what route do you want to take home?" And I said, "Well, do you remember years and years ago when we visited mom's friends who lived in Duluth?" And I just had this memory of what a beautiful town it was. And I didn't prepare any photos, but they're like, okay, yeah, let's go back through Duluth and Upper Peninsula. And that's how we went back. And then we made sure to visit my grandfather um, on the way back. And it was fun because it just so happened I realized, oh, he and I are 66 years apart
Oh,
when
wow.
it dawned on me. And it was so neat to have a photo of me and my dad and my grandpa
Wow.
there. And it was such a nice way to kind of finish off the visit with, after exploring all of these new things that none of us had seen before, maybe, or that my dad hadn't seen in years and years, and then kind of bringing it all together with getting to see family again, something that we were so familiar with, that we'd seen, people that we've seen and known and loved so much, and then and then, and then heading home the next day. It was just, I'll never. I think my parents say the same thing. I'll never forget this trip, and I just hope so much that I can do something like this with my kids, when, as the photo of my dad showed, when he's 70.
That is amazing, Barney. I love that there was something in that trip for everyone too. Things that your mom was drawn to, things your dad had experienced, things you were excited about, and you all just shared in each other's enthusiasm for those things.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
also loved how spontaneous it was. You just
Yeah.
kind of went for it and you kept
Yeah.
going. It
Yeah. Yeah.
was
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you kept discovering thing after thing that was
Mm-hmm.
really unique and enjoyable. And um, I could totally see why that's one of your favorite vacations.
Oh
And
yeah.
I bet your parents really appreciated that you initiated it, right? Because you kind of
Mm.
had the idea to just
Mm-hmm.
launch out. And
Yeah.
um, that is wonderful. And to probably think about all of the stories that you learned about your parents during that trip,
Mm-hmm.
that you carry with you. And I think that's a special thing too about vacation. Sometimes when people are away from their
Mm-hmm.
normal environment,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll sometimes just slow down enough to tell some stories, or somehow the circumstances of the vacation or sites or events draw forth stories. And it's a great way to celebrate and enjoy that,
Mm-hmm.
for sure.
Mm-hmm.
um, I have a few pictures
Yeah.
of some of my favorite vacations, and the ones that I'm going to share are more things that we had planned for. But even though we had planned for them, surprises still happen. And so I just
Oh.
throw that in there as a little caveat.
Okay.
So just to get started here, then, on the topic of surprises, this picture is taken in Holland, Michigan, which is near that beach I showed you earlier,
Uh-huh.
Lake Town Beach, and Katie's vacation site. And then in this picture, it is Katie and I and our children. And then Katie's brother and her sister-in-law, they're standing in the center in like a gray and maroon shirt.
Uh-huh.
But then the surprise was we were walking down Main Street there the first day we got there. And who walks up but in the blue and the pink shirt, Katie's uncle and aunt. They happened to be vacationing in Holland, Michigan at the same time
Whoa.
and walking down the street at the same time, totally unplanned. And there we are, we bump into each other. So that was just one of those surprises that you would never think could happen. But we really enjoyed seeing them. We visited for quite some time and then we each went on our way. But sometimes on vacation, you get away and you're just with your family, and sometimes you get away and you run into family, and that's what happened there, which is kind of neat. And then along this idea too of connecting with people, when we were able to go to California last summer, it was during the pandemic still, and I know we're still in some level of that too, right? But at that time, mask wearing was even more emphasized, and so you could see in the picture both my friend and I have a mask on, but this is my friend Joe. We're childhood friends who have stayed in contact, and one of the great joys of that trip was being able to reconnect with him. We were in San Diego with Katie's family for quite a large amount of the trip, and then as we traveled to the next part of our trip, we went by Los Angeles where he lives and got to spend time with him and his family. And I just want to mention vacation does create space sometimes too for reconnecting with people. If you are vacationing near their area where they live or somehow overlaps with their own travels, and that is a great joy as well. And then I did want to share too, when we were on that vacation, when you're in a new environment, this here is taken near Monterey. And I think the name of this particular beach was like Lover's Cove or something like that. And we had heard it was very nice, but when we went, we didn't know about the ecosystem. And as we got closer to the water, we saw there were these large rocks and the water would flow in, and in between the rocks, you could see sea anemones and other marine life that we wouldn't typically see at the beaches that we would go to. And so we spent so much time in the rocks enjoying that. And that was that example of vacation as a time of learning and discovery, as well as relaxing. And it was one of the favorite moments we had in that trip, and one of my favorite moments for us as a family. But this vacation, we had planned for like 4 or 5 years in advance. Like we kept thinking about it and planning for it and saving up. And then we were supposed to leave the year that the pandemic hit in 2020, and pandemic came in March here in Ohio, and we were going to leave in June. And so the trip, was delayed, and then we didn't know how long the pandemic would last. So we planned it again, and then it was delayed again. So then we planned it a third time, and finally we're able to go. But so it's just interesting when you have something you look forward to, and then you finally get to go. There are things that you anticipate that happen, but then there are things that happen that are surprises. And this was another surprise. And then one final set of photos here is another vacation we took that is huge for us as a family, very memorable. And that was when we went to Harry Potter World in Orlando. And that was something that we had also planned for years and saved up for. And Katie went through all of the books with our kids before we went. And so they were interested in the characters and in the stories. And then we saw the movies, and arriving here at Universal Studios and going to this area, it was just so fascinating to see something realized in physical space that you had read about and thought about for a long time. And it was very immersive just walking through the space they created. This here is supposed to be Hogsmeade, which in the stories, is a place of celebration, and you go and you buy things from shops and have a great meal. So we went and had the great feast at Hogsmeade and had all this delicious food and enjoyed the shops. And there was another part of the park called Diagon Alley, and that was fascinating too. But this was one of those examples of the family looking forward to something for a long time, going there and getting to do it, and it being very immersive and very satisfying experience.
Yeah, it's so neat. I think too of the one big kind of family vacation that we really planned and saved for was my first time on an airplane when we went to see actually kind of my mom's friends out in Colorado. and we drove around a bit, and we got to, I can't remember how far we went, but we ended up seeing the Mesa Verde area, where like the quick cliff dwelling, some of the maybe Pueblo Indians who had lived in that area. And that too, when I was that young, I never imagined what the Western US was like, because we were always in kind of north or the northeast part. And it was just so amazing to see that area. And I think my parents really experienced a lot of the new things like that too. And yeah, those times when you can treat your family and the people with you to those really unique ones that require a lot of extra planning. Boy, those just make so many wonderful memories too, for sure.
Are there any final things that you would like to share about Barney before we draw things to a close?
Yeah, I just think that it was so wonderful to start off today's episode with the scripture and kind of expanding our idea of what vacation is, and maybe reminding us of what vacation is, and seeing the different ways that we can enjoy vacations, maybe should enjoy vacations, and thinking back on the memories that they create and how we can later enjoy them again, and even kind of revisit and kind of recreate and even kind of transport vacations and memories of vacations to new experiences with the people with us. And yeah, it's what a great time as we're all thinking about vacations now as we're into summer. Yeah, what a wonderful thing that we are blessed to be able to experience these vacations with our families. Any final thoughts for you, Jacob?
I think you summarized it wonderfully, and I just want to thank you and our guests for joining us on this adventure today as we reflected on vacations. And until next time, goodbye.